Essentially, like the big theme of Stargate is essentially what do you do when you have power over somebody else? And like if you are stronger in some way, what are the consequences of that in terms of how you relate to other people, right? So the Goa'uld are more powerful than us, and so they think they deserve to rule us, and they are like parasites that live off us, essentially. And the Asgard, which we meet, these are like Thor and his people, are another advanced alien species, and their answer to that question is it gives them the responsibility to protect us like children. So they will protect us from the Goa'uld, but they will not treat us as equals because they think we will get there in 1,000 years or whatever, and then we will be partners. But until now, we are treated like children, right? And so every major faction in this show kind of has a different answer to that question of if you are stronger than somebody else, how should you relate to them? And Earth's answer is essentially it gives us the obligation to help people and help them catch up with us in a way and be partners as much as possible. So, for example, there's an episode. So relatively early on in the show, a species called the Unas are discovered, and they're essentially the first hosts of the Goa'uld. They evolved on the same planet as these parasites, and they're like these lizard people, and they are not very technological, but they are intelligent. And it is discovered that a lot of Unas live on our planet directly on top of like this resource that we need to fight the Goa'uld, right? And so there are these different responses to how should we deal with them. Some people say we should negotiate with them. Others say, well, we're stronger than we, so we can just displace them somewhere else, and then we can set up our mines, and that will allow us to protect Earth because of the resources we get from that location. And the episode essentially involves Samuel Jackson being kidnapped by one of them or taken hostage, and he gradually learns his language, and he then eventually brokers a deal where they mine this mineral and sell it to us, but in a way that respects their spiritual traditions, because that area has spiritual significance to them. So it kind of manages to kind of create an equal partnership where everybody gets what they want by kind of building a dialogue, right? So that is kind of like Stargate in a microcosm, where there are these massive power differentials, where most civilizations are either much more powerful than us or much weaker than us. And then there's this question of, okay, how should we relate to other people? And different characters have different answers. Like about halfway into the show, there's like this episode where Earth needs a resource from somebody who's like embroiled in this world war, and we can give them a resource that allows them to power their super weapons in exchange for something that we need. I think they have the cure for cancer or something like that, something really valuable. But we realize that they are the bad guys. They're essentially the Nazis in that world war. And now the question becomes, how much are our morals worth, for instance? And in that episode, the Stargate Command makes the decision to not give the technology to these people because of what they would do with it. But that is exactly what the aliens did in the first season towards Earth. They would say, no, you're not ready for this technology. And if you get wiped out by the Goa'uld because you're not strong enough, that's too bad. But we are too evolved to give you this weapon that you're not ready for. And so they flipped the script after a couple of seasons where Earth is suddenly now in this position of power.
Earth are like the good guys. So could you argue that that's not really like a true reflection? Of course, it's not going to be a true reflection of actually how the world is. But because obviously, like, what I'm trying to get at is a lot of countries, for example, like people are like, a lot of countries are very like built off imperialism, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any of that throughout? Like, are people from Earth always going to be the good guys in this series?
They actually early on in the show, there is a splinter faction in the US government that thinks we should just take what we need. So like there's an episode in which a planet has an alien artifact that allows them to regulate the weather, which is obviously very powerful. And so SG-1 goes to that planet, kind of reports back, and then they come back a month later, and they are essentially hated because they are accused of having stolen this artifact, which they know nothing about, right? And then it turns out, after some investigation, it turns out that there is another SG team that went back to that planet and stole the artifact. And so the plot is about two factions within Stargate Command fighting each other about how to deal with essentially indigenous cultures.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's one episode. One thing that's really realistic about Stargate is that it's not all good or bad. Like there are different perspectives, and there are trade-offs, and sometimes your morals come with a cost, and sometimes that cost is too high, and sometimes it isn't. And it attempts to be quite nuanced about this. It is not as simple as we are the good guys. It's we are the good guys if we try.